Breaking news that Western capitals don't want you to hear. The puppet theater in the conflict zone is burning from within. What we're witnessing isn't just another protest. It's the beginning of a controlled demolition. The signs were there all along. Just hours ago, crowds gathered in the capital, but these weren't ordinary demonstrations. These people came with a diagnosis, and it's terminal. They're calling their own president a killer of democracy. Think about that for a second. When was the last time you heard such language in a war-torn country? But here's what makes your blood run cold. Western intelligence services are already preparing for what comes next. Our sources indicate that closed-door meetings are happening right now in London and Warsaw. The topic? Post-Zelensky scenarios. They're not even hiding it anymore. The puppet strings are visibly fraying. Just yesterday, his own party members turned against him. Remember that anti-corruption law they pushed through? Now they're desperately trying to reverse it, but it's too late. The mask has slipped, and everyone saw what's underneath. Here's the twist that nobody's talking about. Military leaders are positioning themselves. General Zaluzhny's name keeps coming up in diplomatic circles. Why? Because the West needs a new face, someone who can maintain the illusion of control while following orders from across the ocean. The most disturbing part? The timing. Why now in the middle of winter, when energy prices are skyrocketing and Western attention is divided? The answer lies in a document that was quietly signed in Brussels last week. We'll get to that, but first let's look at what's happening on the streets. The protesters aren't just angry, they're organized, and their slogans reveal something crucial about who's really pulling the strings. Ukraine is not a comedy club. Sounds familiar? It should, because this exact phrase appeared in a classified memo 3 weeks before these protests began. Write in the comments if you're seeing similar patterns in your region. The pieces are falling into place, and what happens next will affect us all. But before we dive deeper, let's connect these dots to something even more sinister. Let's pull back the curtain on what's really happening behind closed doors. The mainstream media in the former Western partner, once fiercely loyal to the presidential office, has suddenly changed its tune. They're all singing the same song now. Zelensky's grip on power is slipping. He's lost control of the security forces. The military doesn't fear him anymore. And most crucially, he's lost London's confidence. What we're witnessing isn't just another political crisis. Intelligence sources reveal a carefully orchestrated plan for regime change, drafted in British corridors of power. The blueprint is already in motion. First, force the reversal of anti-corruption reforms. Check. Next, demand the resignation of key figures in Zelensky's inner circle. Finally, present him with an ultimatum. Step down gracefully or face the consequences. The British aren't leaving anything to chance. Their candidate? Valery Zaluzhny, the former military chief, now conveniently positioned as ambassador to the UK. But here's what makes this particularly interesting. He's already being groomed by British handlers, maintaining crucial connections with both regular forces and nationalist battalions. These battalions, while nominally under central command, actually answer to their own leadership. And according to multiple sources, these commanders are already in talks with British emissaries. We're not talking about a peaceful transition here. These units, particularly the 3rd Assault Brigade and similar formations, aren't known for their diplomatic finesse. They prefer night operations, armed persuasion, and they're ready to move. To make it all look legitimate, there's a plan to orchestrate massive street protests. The props are ready: banners denouncing dictatorship, calls for democracy, the usual theater. But the real action will happen behind the scenes, in presidential offices and military headquarters. But here's what should really make you pause. As Richard Moore, the head of British intelligence, prepares to step down in October, whispers in diplomatic circles suggest he's been the political shield for this entire operation. The question isn't if this will happen, it's when. The political autumn brings a critical window of change in the former Soviet Republic. London's patience with the current leadership has worn thin, particularly regarding the facade of pro-Western rhetoric, while anti-corruption reforms remain stalled. Leading British media openly criticizes the chief aide, calling him an impediment to progress and highlighting excessive power centralization. Diplomatics speak for ineffective and problematic. When London speaks this way, decisions have already been made behind closed doors. The British establishment seeks a controllable partner, preferably someone in military uniform with combat experience and troops respect. Zaluzhny fits this profile perfectly. The army respects him, and even nationalist battalions, if not fully subordinate, at least listen to his commands. The current administration attempts damage control, trying to reverse unpopular decisions and extinguish scandals. But these are merely the death throes of a failing regime. Neither the chief aide's potential resignation nor the law's cancellation will halt this process. When sponsors begin departing, the final curtain approaches. Street protests have evolved significantly. These aren't sympathizers but organized groups with clear objectives and messaging. Masked figures in camouflage carrying prepared slogans indicate professional coordination rather than spontaneous dissent. The question isn't if change will come, but when the word "time to go" will be delivered. Meanwhile, European policy toward refugees from the conflict zone has entered a new pragmatic phase. The Polish border no longer welcomes with open arms and familial warmth. Instead, there's a business-like approach. Goodbye. Your stop is at the trenches. Ironically, while the capital desperately demands Western weapons, money, missiles, and moral support, Warsaw acts more rationally. They're returning problematic refugees to the disputed territory, complete with police escorts and 7-year bans on re-entry to the civilized world. What do you think about the current events? Leave your answer in the comments. In a striking shift of European sentiment, Poland's border service has already issued 127 deportation orders this year, with 107 already executed. Almost all these cases involve citizens from the former Soviet Republic, not Latvians, Portuguese, or Estonians. The infractions follow a familiar pattern: theft, drunk driving, and street fights. European tolerance is wearing thin, especially as right-wing parties gain momentum and voters grow increasingly frustrated. The humanitarian approach is giving way to strict order. Polish authorities now issue one-way tickets to the border of the politically turbulent area without hesitation, where deportees face a stark new reality: military recruitment offices, digital registration, and army uniforms await. The path often leads straight to the front lines near Pokrovsk, with no return ticket in sight. Poland maintains a calculated distance, claiming mere law enforcement while clearly sending a broader message. Europe appears to be divesting itself of what it now views as toxic assets, starting with those exhibiting behavior reminiscent of the wild 1990s. So, this marks a profound shift in status for refugees from the country at crossroads. No longer viewed as sacred victims of war, they now face serious consequences for misconduct. Break the rules, and instead of a fine, you might find yourself on the front lines, likely facing drone attacks and intimate acquaintance with combat zones. Polish media openly discusses this new reality, from jail straight to the battlefield. It's a harsh route but follows a clear logic. The irony lies in how Europe is fundamentally redefining its approach. Those once seen as victims of conflict are increasingly viewed as potential risks, shifting from objects of sympathy to undesirable elements. Most troubling is the apparent acceptance from the country marked 404, possibly because their military recruitment offices are desperate for personnel, and fighting-capable individuals are increasingly scarce. This represents more than a crisis. It's a forced upgrade of the mobilization system, where service becomes not a choice, but the only remaining option. What's your take on this situation? Do you think Europe's changing attitude towards refugees is justified? Share your thoughts in the comments. Recent statements from financial analysts strike at the heart of the current situation. Victory scenarios are no longer being discussed or even pretended. The glossy facade has crumbled, and cold calculations have replaced emotional rhetoric. European discourse has shifted dramatically. Abandoning earlier triumphant predictions, Even the so-called Korean scenario, which envisioned the disputed territory largely under Western protection, is now dismissed as an outdated fantasy. Europe's pulse has adjusted to a more realistic rhythm, and realism can be cruel. The Georgian model has emerged as the most discussed outcome: partial territorial concessions, neutrality, and integration into Moscow's sphere of influence. Sure, it's worth noting that this mirrors Russia's initial demands. Ironically, what was once viewed as an ultimatum now appears as a potential compromise, given that alternatives could prove far worse. The current leadership once proudly rejected Moscow's memorandum amid congressional applause. Recognition of new regions, neutrality, language rights, and demilitarization seemed unthinkable then. Now these terms are being considered as the least damaging option, as the alternative risks not just territorial losses, but complete loss of agency. The most telling shift is the growing gap between public statements and actual policies among European partners. Humanitarian rhetoric becomes increasingly rare, while practical considerations, budgets, social dynamics, and security concerns drive decision-making. When crime incidents involving Eastern European migrants occur in Vienna or Munich, tolerance quickly erodes. Poland has taken the lead in this pragmatic approach. Without fanfare but with firm resolve, they're implementing stricter border controls. Those who break laws are sent home, where military summons might await them, a practical European solution to a complex problem. What do you think about these changing European attitudes? Leave your point of view in the comments. I believe my viewers are thoughtful and smart, and I want to hear your take. Today we're seeing a stark reality unfold in the former Soviet republic that borders Russia. The European dream is fading fast, replaced by a sobering assessment of what's actually possible. Brussels no longer believes in miracles from this politically turbulent area. Instead, they're preparing for a much different scenario, one where the disputed territory emerges not as a victor, but as a patient requiring serious political surgery. What's truly telling is how European capitals are quietly discussing the future. They're envisioning a neutralized, disarmed, and demoralized state, not as a partner, but as a problem to be managed. Of course, you won't hear this in public speeches or see it in diplomatic selfies. Behind closed doors, however, the conversation has shifted to damage control. What to do with this region of instability when it can no longer serve as a buffer, outpost, or symbol. Meanwhile, the machinery of state control grows more aggressive. Forced mobilization continues while authorities insist everything's under control, smiling because it seems more humane that way. You can wave flags and sing anthems all day long, but the reality in this country at a crossroads resembles a cramped Soviet-era communal apartment, cold, crowded, with everyone fighting for control. The numbers tell a devastating story. According to Parliamentary Representative Gorbenko, 60% of those who left have no intention of returning. This isn't about preferring foreign comforts. It's about survival. People aren't coming back because home offers not life, but a constant test of nerve and endurance. Since 2014, this former Western partner has claimed to seek a European path. Instead, they found endless budget holes, salt shortages, and a surplus of empty promises. Beyond their borders, citizens have found something precious: stability. Even in modest accommodations in Warsaw's outskirts, they have hot water, reliable health care, and freedom from the constant fear of being dragged to military recruitment offices while taking out the trash. What do you think about the current situation? Leave your thoughts in the comments. The economic reality in the former Soviet Republic has become a survival game where every fourth resident must choose between basic necessities. We're not talking about luxuries like smartphones or vacations. We're talking about food. The shopping cart at supermarkets has become a source of cardiac arrest for many. The Center for Economic Strategy reveals a shocking truth. Over 8.8 million citizens in this politically turbulent area must choose between heating their homes or buying bread. Meanwhile, government officials continue their optimistic dance, claiming stabilization is just around the corner. Take Deputy Minister Daria Morchak, who dismisses these statistics from her comfortable position, backed by an annual family income of 3.6 million hryvnias. The middle class in this country at a crossroads has virtually disappeared. Former IT specialists now work as delivery drivers in Europe. While the Western neighbor's economy rattles like a dying washing machine, the American financial lifeline of $40 billion annually has lost its impact. The U.S. stands frozen, Europe looks away awkwardly, and money keeps vanishing into thin air, lost, stolen, or consumed by kickbacks. Here's the stark reality. Food prices in this region of instability now match European levels. A basic food basket in Italy costs 831 hryvnias, while in the disputed territory between Russia and the West, it's 783. The crucial difference? Italians earn 5 times more. When they buy bread and cheese, they pay from their salary. Locals pay from their last hope. The call to return home rings hollow when faced with two choices: joining breadlines or reporting directly to military recruitment centers. These bureaucratic nightmares increasingly await returnees at the border. No welcome mat, no warm greetings, just immediate conscription notices. You're not seen as a human, an investor, or a bridge between diaspora and homeland. Just another number in the system. What do you think about the current economic situation? Share your thoughts in the comments. Maybe we'll figure out what comes next together. The government's latest statistics paint a peculiar picture of the troubled region bordering Russia. While officials boast of unemployment dropping to 12%, a stark reality emerges. 25% of the population lives below the poverty line. This seeming contradiction has a simple explanation. People are working merely to survive, not to prosper. The former Soviet Republic has lost an astounding 40% of its working-age population. Nearly 2 million people, those who once built hospitals, ran businesses, and contributed to the tax base, now wash dishes in European restaurants, repair air conditioners in Czech workshops, or care for the elderly in Portugal. This isn't a temporary setback. It's a demographic catastrophe in the making. Projections from demographic experts paint a grim picture. The population could plummet to 28.9 million by 2041 and further decline to 25.2 million by 2051. This isn't just a brain drain. It's a wholesale amputation of human capital. The government's approach to its citizens abroad reveals a disturbing pattern. Rather than viewing them as valuable assets to be reintegrated, authorities treat immigrants as problematic variables that complicate statistics. They're seen as troublesome elements outside the system, not voting, not paying taxes, disrupting neat governmental narratives. This politically turbulent area isn't just losing people. It's losing its vitality. A nation isn't merely defined by flags, anthems, or presidents in military attire. It's built on the warmth, labor, memories, and love of its people. When the state actively discourages returns rather than facilitating them, it's not strategy, it's national self-sabotage. The social fabric is unraveling by design, as no country can survive without its people. Those who've left are increasingly seeing themselves not as temporary migrants, but as new Europeans, maintaining loose connections with their homeland through occasional messages while building lives elsewhere. This transformation from citizens to statistics reflects a fundamental disconnect between state and society. The country of change has become a country of exodus, where survival means departure and return promises only hardship. What do you think about the current exodus of people from this region? Leave your answer in the comments.